It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another Walking Dead Throwback Thursday video. For those of you that don't know, we have this segment that we do during the off season of The Walking Dead called Throwback Thursday. And in that, we basically revisit earlier seasons, earlier moments, earlier characters and things like that. And we rank certain things. Now in this one, we're going to be going back to not too long ago. We're going to be ranking episodes from the first half of season 10. Before we jump into it, the way I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna basically go in reverse order. I'm gonna tell you the worst episode first and then work my way into the episode that I think was the best. And for each episode, I'm gonna say a few plus points about that episode and a few negative points about that episode. And for the sake of keeping this video a reasonable length, I'm not going to dive into too many details, just quick discussion points. So with that said, let's jump right into this. Starting with the episode that I thought was the worst episode of the first half. And that episode is 10:08. The mid-season finale. I'm gonna go through the positives first. The tension they built, showing Sadiq as a walker coming towards baby Coco while Rosita was fighting Dante, was very well done, and I absolutely loved that. Loved Gabriel killing Dante. It was unexpected, emotional, raw, and entertaining. Also, absolutely loved Carol and Daryl's conversation when we had Daryl basically telling Carol that he's the one she should go to when she needs to talk to someone. She needs to let out some of her feelings and emotions. Absolutely loved it. It was very organic and I really, really enjoyed it. The cliffhanger, although disappointing, I'll talk more about that when I'm talking about the negatives, but it was disappointing, but at the same time, it was good in two regards. The visual look was fantastic, and also the idea behind it, which was getting the herd into the caves, was cool. It made Alpha a more layered and a smarter leader. On the negative side, the flashbacks showing how Dante was actually a whisperer in the intro and them addressing some of the plot holes that we talked about with Dante being a whisperer was cool, but at the same time, they only covered like around half of the plot holes that I identified. And some of those were even forced explanations. And they pretty much skipped through the other half of the plot holes that we discussed. Also, Dante fighting Rosita was not realistic. Dante would have crushed Rosita easily, so the fact that they did that just to move the story along was a little disappointing. I was also massively disappointed that they didn't really show the full extended barn massacre scene, especially after it was teased and hyped for so long. The survivors questioning Dante was a little underwhelming. I think it would be more realistic for them to be a little rougher on him, and it kind of felt not only rushed, but also felt like they toned it down just a little bit. Luke, Michonne, and Judith going to the library was a waste of time. Too much time was wasted for something they could have done in a few minutes. When we had ninja walkers getting Luke, it was actually very noticeable. They've done that before where they have all these ninja walkers come around and it's not as noticeable, but this one was just kind of in your face. It was really distracting. Attack at Oceanside was a big disappointment since they pretty much completely skipped it. They didn't really dive into it. Also, everyone quickly trusting Gamma to look for the herd was stupid since they just learned Dante was a spy. So I don't think it made sense for them to just quickly trust Gamma. Then we have the Michonne and Virgil story. So Michonne and Virgil's story and Michonne agreeing to go with Virgil to go find the weapons was forced. So now the cliffhanger, a massive disappointment. It was one of those I hate this moment scenes. What the hell was Carol doing in the first place? She's way too much of a badass and way too much of a survivalist to be making dumbass decisions like this. Plus, the ending was cliche and a cheap way to interrupt the build-up and create this what's gonna happen moment to get everyone to come back in a couple months to watch the rest. So that was number 8. At number 7, I have 10:03. This episode has a few plus points. One, Gamma showing up and telling them to go to the border was cool and it really worked, especially since at this point Gamma was still presented as someone we didn't know whether we should trust or not. Also loved the Negan and Aaron conversation. It really fit the story and it worked in the story. And also it was very fun and entertaining. And pairing those two really, really worked. Also loved Aaron being saved by Negan. It was expected, but it doesn't matter. I loved it. Also loved Carol's hallucination and what they kind of set up where we were questioning what is real, what is a hallucination. Really loved that. And the last thing that I really loved was the reveal at the end that the Whisperer was killed and turned into a walker. Now, some of the negatives, the intro montage with the title cards showing a full 2 days go by and the residents at Alexandria fighting off the walkers in under 2 minutes was just a little too much. It could have been structured and executed a lot better, although it was a cool concept, and I'm glad they didn't have that just be one episode by dragging it. It was too quick and the action was overlooked. The survivors meeting Alpha and some other Whispers at the border was a big disappointment. It was kind of hyped to be this big thing, and then it led to pretty much nothing. Carol taking a shot at Alpha, it was set up pretty well. They justified it well by having it be caused by Carol popping pills and stuff like that. Made it more realistic, but it wasn't executed right. They should have all anticipated Carol was gonna do this, and they shouldn't have even allowed her to go in the first place. The other thing that didn't really work for me was how they had Carol popping pills out of nowhere. I think that they could have set that up a lot earlier. Carol being trapped by the Whisperer was a nice touch, but how she was actually trapped was a big WTF. At number 6, I have 10:01, the premiere. Some plus points. The satellite crash was good and unexpected and a unique intro to the season. Even though it was sort of spoiled by AMC itself right before the premiere, it was still well executed. Aside from the visual awesomeness of the satellite crash, it also served multiple purposes in the story, which I really loved. It was a plot device to get the survivors to cross into the Whisperers territory. It was in a way where it was reasonable and it made sense. The second purpose was that it was set up for later on when Eugene uses parts of the Soviet satellite that crashed to expand his communication through the radio and eventually communicate with someone from a brand new community, which in the comics was called Commonwealth, and I'm sure it'll be called Commonwealth in the show as well. And the third purpose that it served was that it was a good way to show threats out there other than walkers or just a new big bad. They brought forward the idea that natural disasters can also be dangerous in this post-apocalyptic world. The battle drill at Oceanside was well done and I absolutely loved it. The Siddiq PTSD flashbacks were executed pretty well in this episode, but too bad that it didn't actually have the proper payoff because they actually didn't show us the extended scene in the mid-season finale. I really enjoyed the Gabriel and Negan conversation because of the background that those two had already. Now moving on to the negatives. The title cards in this episode didn't really work for me, and it didn't really add anything to the story. Aaron crossing the border with Michonne was dumb. This is where we have characters doing stupid things to move the story forward. And the last negative thing is that the ending cliffhanger where Carol and Alpha lock eyes on one another was a bit cliche and a bit of a disappointment, especially since it ended in a sort of awkward point in the story. At number 5, I have 10:04. Some of the plus points, Lydia being treated poorly and being accused of being the enemy. I really liked that story and it really fit the narrative of the story, and it was something that wasn't really done in the comics too much or too well, so I absolutely loved it. Also, someone spreading the message, Silence the Whisperers, was very well done. The switch and the remix compared to the comics was well executed. Negan bonding with Lydia, really enjoyed that scene, especially seeing Daryl step in to try to stop it, was a bonus. I absolutely also loved Daryl talking to Lydia after she was attacked. Gabriel finding out that Negan escaped was cool. Also, Lydia saying that it was her that let him out was pretty interesting, and I think it fit the story, and it worked. Some negatives, the tree falling down at Hilltop was cool, but it had an underwhelming resolution, and they pretty much skipped through them actually dealing with the tree falling. Other than the one-take shot, which was them fighting the walkers, the rest was pretty much skipped over. Ezekiel contemplating to jump off the bridge, and Michonne and Ezekiel kissing was just a tiny bit cheap. Maybe I wouldn't have thought that it was cheap if they didn't put it in the trailer. Last, Negan rescuing Lydia but accidentally killing one of the aggressors. I freaking loved that. But the fight itself was kind of lame. The fight didn't really feel as raw as it should have been. At number 4, I have 10:07, the lead up to the mid-season finale. Lydia's conversation with Carol about how to break the Whispers, saying that the idea that a place like Alexandria can exist is dangerous and all of that. I really enjoyed that scene. It was very deep and I really enjoyed it. The Siddiq PTSD flashbacks were really cool, but I'm disappointed we didn't get an extended cut of the barn massacre. Also loved Carol giving the Whisper prisoner a sandwich, the Whisper acting like he was softening up but then showing his loyalty to Alpha. I absolutely enjoyed that. Also, the Whisper prisoner giving away the secret, saying that Alpha sacrificed Lydia, was pretty cool. Lydia confronting Carol for using her and lying to her and going back to the Whisper side was pretty cool. It was a clever remix to surprise us since it didn't really happen in the comics that way. Now from a negatives point of view, about the water being the cause of why everyone's sick was cool, but it makes it more obnoxious to believe that nobody caught that earlier. Dante killing the prisoner to stop him from spilling the beans, it was cool, but it pretty much gave it away that Dante was a Whisper spy. So it took away from the reveal that he was actually a Whisper, a tiny bit at least. Them revealing Aaron was having regular meetings with Gamma was forced, or at least it wasn't explained well enough. Carol and Lydia just rolling in when Aaron and Gamma are meeting is just a little too convenient, even though it was a cool way to end that scene. Dante being revealed to be a spy. So this is one of my biggest disappointments in this episode. I didn't like it too much, and it was only because it brings up so many plot holes and flaws. Even though they addressed some of it in 10:08, like I said, it's still not too well executed, and it was still not explained that well. At number 3, I have 10:06. Some of the positives in this episode: I absolutely loved Negan's dialogue, getting to the Whisperers camp. Really enjoyed that. It was very entertaining. Also, I absolutely loved Negan first seeing Alpha and also Beta kneeling in front of Alpha. It was a pretty cool visual and I absolutely loved it. The Negan Beta back and forth montage was pretty cool. There were some small moments that were absolutely entertaining and hilarious, but they were also very quick, so they didn't stretch it out. So I really enjoyed those. Beta pissing Negan off and not giving him any food to eat. Negan almost breaking out of character, but soon kind of stepping back because he knows he's there for Alpha was pretty cool. And also the Whisperer giving Negan food, absolutely loved that. And also I really enjoyed it more because it connected to Beta killing him as a result of him giving Negan food. I also loved Beta leaving Negan to die. I thought that was pretty entertaining and it really fit the story well. Them revealing that Negan killed the walkers and having Negan roll in to meet Alpha was freaking fantastic. And I absolutely loved it. This has to be my favorite scene from the first half. Especially the ending with Alpha shushing Negan and Beta standing in the back. At number 2, I have 10:05. Some of the plus points: I loved to see Negan out of his cell, spreading his legs a little bit. I also loved how they remixed it and had Brendan just catch up to Negan instead of being the one that let him out. Makes it more exciting because it was unexpected, and also it opens up the possibility to someone like Carol being responsible for Negan's escape, which I think is absolutely genius. Also, I absolutely loved that they made Brendan be an ex-savior, or his family being an ex-savior. I think it fits and it makes Brendan's actions more reasonable and bound in reality. I also loved Brendan giving Negan Lucille 2.0 as well as his jacket as a gift. Loved Negan rejecting it even more because it shows his transformation. Seeing Negan save the mom and her son was pretty cool. Brendan saying classic Negan also made the scene more fun to watch. I also absolutely loved how they brought everything together in terms of Brendan killing the mother and son and Negan having to kill him for it. I also really enjoyed Daryl telling Connie a story about Merle. It was a cool throwback moment and I really enjoyed that. I also really liked revealing Ezekiel has cancer. Now that being said, if this leads to Ezekiel's death, I'm gonna have to go back on my statement saying that I really like it because I think that it's an underwhelming death for him. But if this is just a setup for the next arc and the Commonwealth story, I absolutely love it. The ending of the episode was really cool with Negan in full Negan spirit, crossing the Whisperers territory and meeting Beta. Loved it. Now from a negative perspective, Kelly hunting the pig was pretty well shot filming wise, and the way they mixed the audio was great, but with a cheap ending. How the hell did she get out of that? Since there were no actual payoff and they never showed how she actually escaped, the well-filmed setup won't be considered a plus. The Magna Yumiko beef that they had in this episode felt out of nowhere and felt like a waste of time. I also loved Negan's conversation with the kid, but it felt a bit stretched out and they went a little overboard with it, to be honest with you. I hated Magna being the one to steal the supplies because it was ridiculous. Not that she did it, that wasn't the ridiculous part, but the fact that they all just forgot about it right away was really ridiculous. Was all of that just to have a moment between Connie and Daryl? Then that's a lot of setup for one small moment. And last, when we have Aaron showing up to give Gamma these bandages and helping her, was a little bit forced, and there were some clear mistakes there. Like, who was in whose territory? Wouldn't they be a bit defensive? If Aaron is in the Whisperer's territory, wouldn't Gamma be a little bit defensive? If it was the other way around, wouldn't Aaron be a little bit defensive and question why she's there? Also, why didn't Aaron tell anyone back at the community that the water was contaminated? And at number 1, I have 10:02. There were a lot of plus in this episode, but I'm gonna keep it very short. First, the second alpha flashbacks that they had in this episode was pretty cool. The first one, of course, was in season 9, but in this one, I felt like instead of showing how twisted Alpha is, they are exploring Alpha's mental instability, which I absolutely enjoyed. I also loved that they did not have it be exclusively a flashback episode, which would have made for a bottle episode. They had the scenes in the current events complement scenes that were shown in the flashback, so I absolutely loved that. And they did it to fully show us not only that Alpha is being torn about Lydia being gone, but also giving Alpha and Beta a backstory in the flashback, which adds so many layers to their relationship, which I truly enjoyed. More than this being an Alpha flashback episode though, it was a Beta-centric episode. Great entrance by Beta before he met Alpha. Loved the dynamic between Alpha and Beta. Loved the setup for Beta's mask and his backstory for that. And I absolutely enjoyed Easter eggs in this episode about Beta's identity. Also loved the way they introduced Gamma and how they had this sort of comparison between Lydia and Gamma. I absolutely loved that. I also was a big fan of the story they told with Gamma and her sister and how it connected back to season 9 and the baby being left behind. So I absolutely loved that. I also loved how they circled back to episode 1 and showed the satellite crash from the Whisperer's perspective. That was pretty well done and I really enjoyed that. Now from the negative side, a bit of forced tension in the intro before Alpha gets into the building, right before Alpha meets Beta. Also, Gamma's sister's supposed punishment felt awkward and lacked a reasonable ending, given how intense the scene was and how it was actually set up. Gamma's sister attacking Alpha was exciting and interesting in theory, but it was not executed well. Maybe it was the way it was edited. Maybe it was that they rushed it because they packed everything into one episode. The Gamma being appointed ceremony was cool, but made it kind of obvious that Gamma was bound to have some sort of big story. So because of that, I think that it gave away a little bit too much, a little bit too early, I would say. Alpha being face to face with Carol at the end of the episode was cool, but it felt like a cheap repeat of the cliffhanger from episode 1. So didn't really enjoy that. And that's pretty much it for my ranking. So episode 1002 is my favorite episode of season 10's first half. But I want to know everyone's thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe for more content, and press the bell button to receive notifications for daily uploads.